So the population of Asians is quite small here in Waco. We would oftentimes go to Austin, Houston, or Dallas, right, to find groceries or to enjoy Asian foods. But then Waco is our home. So we decided in 2017, 2018 that we needed to be part of the change we want to see. And so that's part of why we started our business.
Welcome to Beating the Odds, the podcast about successful minority businesses that will inspire, educate, and inform you. Your host is Mike Dewey, entrepreneur and founder of Hidden Star, a 501c3 nonprofit that has helped hundreds of minority entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses. Discover and celebrate minority business success with Beating the Odds.
Hi, this is Mike Dewey, and on the show today is Jaja Chen. Jaja, are you there?
Yes, I am.
How are you today?
Doing great. Definitely excited for the fall weather.
Yes, absolutely. So as we get started here, can you tell us a little bit about you and your childhood and where you grew up and moved around and education and all of that?
Sure. So I grew up in Norman, Oklahoma. I am a child of immigrants from Taiwan. And so my family was in Oklahoma to study as international students. And so then that's where myself, my two brothers, we were born and raised in Norman. And so I lived there all the way till age 13. And then at the age of 13, I moved with my family overseas, back overseas in East Asia. And so I spent both the middle school, high school between China and Taiwan. And then that's where the latter half of my childhood was.
Off subject of entrepreneurship, how did you find the difference between the American school system and the Chinese and Taiwanese school systems? Harder,
yeah,
easier?
So definitely a lot of differences. I mean, thankfully, so like I spent, 13 years in the U.S. public school system. And then once I moved overseas, actually had the opportunity to be in international school. So it was a bit different than going to local school. But I think a huge difference was just the level of focus on like achievement, grades, especially if we were thinking about like local Taiwanese schools or Chinese schools. There's a huge emphasis on achievement and like being top ranked in your class. There was less of that at my school, at the international school, but there still was a lot of focus on achievement and grades. I think in the U.S., schools oftentimes focus a lot more on sports.
Got it. And can you give us a short description of your business? You're in Waco, Texas, correct?
Yes. I came to Waco after being overseas to study at Baylor University. And so I'm a Baylor alum, studied both undergrad and grad school in social work. And then eventually my husband, Devin, and I started our small business called Cha Community. And that was summer of 2018 is when we started. And so we are a boba tea small business here in Waco. And we also just opened our second boba tea shop, this past spring, this March of 2022.
And I read that you're branching out and you got a location in Waco, and now you're in Temple, Texas, which is what, 30 or 40 miles away?
Correct. So it's only about 30-minute drive. But we have opened that second shop this past spring. And that was a whole long process, with expansion, but we actually almost hit 8 months by next week.
Wow. So when you were growing up, did you always dream about being an entrepreneur or a business owner? Or is there anybody in your family that did that? How did you get the idea that this would be a good idea?
Yeah, well, growing up, I think as an adult looking back, I can see a lot of inklings of entrepreneurship because my grandmother sold a lot of vegetables. She's like a farmer, and so she sold a lot of vegetables at the local farmers market at where they live in East Taiwan. And then my parents, for a while did coffee export and coffee kind of trade. And so that played an influence on the idea of using creative innovation, right, to start something new. And then in college, I was trying to decide between social work as a degree or entrepreneurship. And
Wow.
I almost went the entrepreneurship major route because I really had a desire to do social entrepreneurship. I was really interested in fair trade, cafes and, just like businesses that use their platform to help make a difference in a purpose or a mission beyond just, making money. And so, but I went the social work route because I also was very interested in being a helping professional and pursuing clinical social work, which is what I do right now as a therapist.
Got it. And what was your first real paying job?
Yeah, so first official paying job post high school / college would be working at a domestic violence shelter here in town. So I did that for about 2 years, pursuing my clinical social work license. So I did mostly counseling with adults at that setting, and that was the first job post school.
Got it. And so, where did you and Devin come up with the idea to open it's a tea shop, right?
Yes. So we do boba tea, and then eventually, for the last couple of years with the pandemic, we actually started adding on some Taiwanese food options, including pan-fried dumplings. And so that whole idea of doing boba tea and dumplings was inspired by, of course, my Taiwanese roots and heritage, because I grew up, like I said, both in Norman and also in China and Taiwan. And so boba is a very common drink. It's actually more popular than coffee in Taiwan. There's a boba shop on every block in many cities in Taiwan. And as young as I can remember, in elementary school, I would help my mom scoop and boil the bobas when we had friends and other guests over for dinner. And so it's something that's pretty part of my culture and heritage. But I never thought I would actually open up a boba concept, right? Until in the summer of 2017 is when we were inspired by the idea. One, because we had continuously seen that there was not as much representation of Taiwanese foods in Central Texas. And then two, we just really wanted to start to bring more diverse offerings into the downtown Waco area, because there was more and more small businesses growing at that time that we would oftentimes support. But then we saw that there was not as much like a multicultural food or ethnic food options.
Is there a large Taiwanese community in Waco?
No, so actually in Waco, it's less than 2% Asian. So the population of Asians is quite small here in Waco. And I think that's part of what really drew this idea, is because we would oftentimes go to Austin, Houston, or Dallas, right, to find groceries or to enjoy Asian foods. But then Waco is our home, and we really felt like if Waco is our home and we're just always leaving town to find the foods we love, we're not able to really see, the diverse offerings in Waco. And so for us, instead of just waiting around for, some other concept to come in, we decided in 2017, 2018 that we needed to be part of the change we want to see. And so that's part of why we started our business.
And for those of us who aren't all that familiar with it, what is boba tea?
Yes. So boba is a tapioca-based topping that is made from cassava root, so it is gluten-free, and it has a chewy texture similar to, the best description would be like jellies or gummies. And then It's added to either milk tea, it could be a fruit tea beverage. In fact, we even have coffee boba options. And so it's a topping that's added into beverages, whether iced or hot. And then oftentimes there's different kinds of flavors as well. So the most common would be the ones that are brown or black colored, and those are brown sugar tapioca bobas, also known as like bubble tea or bubble pearls. And then it's a really fun drink in the sense of there's so many different flavor combinations, different types of drinks, and then a lot of customization. So, choosing of not just toppings, but tea base and tea sweetness and even the type of milk choices. And so it's from Taiwan. It was invented in Taiwan in the 80s.
Oh, wow. So when you started in Waco, did you rent a storefront and just put up your shingle and start selling tea, or did you start?
We did a pop up. So we started at the Waco Downtown Farmers Market, summer of 2018, and so that idea of popping up was inspired by a lot of other small businesses in Waco that we had seen start as a pop-up tent and then eventually be able to scale and grow. And so we felt like, the pop-up idea was an easier way to still maintain our full-time employment at that time. And then on the weekends, every Saturday morning, we would pop up a little tent. And we did that for a full year as a pop-up concept. And then eventually started growing not just awareness amongst, Wacoans, but also just growing our guest base and saving up the profits from those pop-up tents to then be able to upgrade to mobile tea truck.
Well, that's really smart because, the failure rate in the restaurant and food service industry is just amazingly high. So to have a pop-up to allow you to make sure that the concept takes off and people will actually buy it before you sink your life savings into building out a store or something, that seems pretty smart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it definitely is a lot of hard work because, rain or shine, we were there each Saturday morning early setting up. And, there's a lot of weather elements, when you're in a pop-up concept. But we definitely look back and are really grateful because we felt like those first 2 years, first year was in the mobile pop-up, and then the second year was a mobile trailer that we had converted into a tea truck. Those first 2 years, I think, really helped us have what I call like a scrappy mentality towards business, using very limited space, right, to be able to create our products. And then once we had a storefront, that was actually when COVID hit. And so
Right.
I think that first 2 years is really what we attribute to helping us weather through COVID and to really pivot because we always had from the beginning, just a very limited space, limited resources to be able to like grow. And so then that really helped us in the midst of the pandemic, especially since, so many restaurants went through a lot of challenge with weathering through the pandemic.
And starting as a pop-up, you almost certainly able to start that with very little upfront capital, right? I mean, you probably didn't have to go borrow a lot of money to get started to prove up your concept.
Yeah, we just used some of our personal savings because we just needed to, have the licenses, and then some bare minimum equipment, like folding tables, folding pop-up tent, and some equipment to actually produce the teas.
So in addition to setting up at the farmers market on Saturday mornings, did you do anything to get the word out? Were you advertising or handing out flyers or any of that?
So using social media, and so that was through both Facebook and Instagram, primarily Instagram at the time. We did invite, friends or family members, but beyond that, it was all through social media marketing. And we did not, at that point, we didn't even do any kind of, like paid advertising. It was just solely through just starting our Instagram page.
How has that changed? Are you how do you do it now? How do you get the word out?
Now we still use Instagram a lot. We've actually started to use a lot more Facebook marketing. Right now, I'm venturing into TikTok more, and that's a whole new kind of journey for me, especially since I'm not as familiar with TikTok. And then we do have an email marketing, so email listing that we have folks join through our website. So those would be the main channels that we have for marketing.
And so with starting like you did, which I can't stress enough is really smart. My bet is you were profitable almost from the beginning, right?
Yeah, basically from day one. And so day one, it was very clear as the concept really hit off, and there was, a lot of support from the community for our launch. We were starting to see that, okay, this is not just going to be a side hustle. This is something where we need to continue growing beyond the pop-up.
Got it. So that was 4 years ago, right? And so then you had moved into a location right as the pandemic hit. Struggled through that. I mean, how bad did it get during the pandemic? Or there's a lot of businesses that got really great during the pandemic.
Yeah. So initially, the biggest challenge was just the navigation, right, of all the dine-in policies. Since we actually opened our shop the same week that the shelter-in-place orders occurred here in Waco, and so our shop and the timing of the pandemic was just kind of parallel. And so I would say the first couple of months was the hardest with navigating all the policies, and then we continued growing though because that was our first time, right, ever having a physical storefront space. And so eventually, as we were able to offer a lot more dine-in options, it actually grew our business in the sense of, we could offer more days to operate, and then we could offer a lot more menu items having a physical space, right, compared to the pop-up tent or the mobile tea truck where you're limited to how much creativity that you can do with a limited space. And so yeah, we actually grew in the midst of the pandemic. I think part of it is also because the city of Waco and also a lot of local organizations did a lot in 2020 to promote local small businesses. And there was all sorts of different initiatives and campaigns to help for the support of local small businesses. And so that was a huge part of the success, I would say, as well, and the ability to navigate through the pandemic.
Wow. So obviously, when you first started the pop-up, it was probably just you and Devin, right, your husband?
Correct.
How many employees do you have now?
Yeah. So when we first started, it was me, Devin, and then just a few friends or folks that Devin had known. Him being a former teacher, and so it was like former folks that he knew through school or whatnot. And so it was just like, oh, you want to help out on the weekend? Sure. That was pretty much the extent at that point of the interview. But those were like very early days when we didn't have as much structures. But now there's a lot more of a structure and interview process for new team members. But right now we have, I believe, about 24, including ourselves. Our team between Temple and Waco, is about 24.
Yeah, let that sink in for a minute. So you started a pop-up tent with you and your husband on Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. Now you've got 27 employees. That's amazing. Way to go.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride, but definitely such an honor. Enjoyed it, kind of reflect back at the journey.
So was there ever a time, it sounds like not, but a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a time where they're like, well, this isn't going to work. This is stupid. I shouldn't have done this. And then success happens. Sounds like you guys took off right from the beginning and just went right past that part.
I would definitely say that there was a lot of growth, especially the first 2.5 years. But then the biggest challenge for us in our journey was trying to scale from our first shop to the second shop. I would say that has been the hardest challenge that we have had to face, especially because we decided, looking back, I'm like, wow, we definitely, I don't know what we were thinking in the sense of the timing, but we decided to open a second shop in the midst of the pandemic, right, in 2021. And that was right before the, kind of, I think, third or fourth wave of COVID, and then also the rise of inflation and supply chain issues that also hit the construction industry really hard. And so,
right.
yeah, and so that was before all of that, right? And so then we were just continuing to grow and then making plans to open that second shop, and then hit a lot of challenges financially with the inflation and supply chain impacts. And then looking back now, I'm like, wow, okay, we definitely, could have had a lot better kind of projections when it came to the level of impact that scaling to second shop would have, just on like cash flow and everything. But, I think part of it was unavoidable as well, because we had not anticipated, the rising cost of inflation and all of the impact that would have on even just like construction materials, paint, equipment, those types of things. So, there's a lot of lessons we learned, along that journey this past year and a half with expanding the shop too. But we definitely are glad to say that we're finally in a point where we feel like we're not in that survival mode anymore, but finally, able to get to a place where we can say that, okay, yeah, that was worth it, even though it was a very difficult process.
Right. What's been the hardest thing for you since in your entrepreneurial journey? I mean, obviously the pandemic is a problem, or has been a problem. What's been the hardest thing?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, the pandemic was really difficult and the impact that had, but outside of the pandemic and just the challenges that brought up, I think personally, in my own individual kind of entrepreneur journey, the hardest thing has been like finding my role, to be honest. I know it's not usually what people usually say as the hardest part, but it's, I kind of joke that the first 2 years I did like every single role that you can think of in the business. And then as we brought on more and more team members, basically kind of delegated and worked myself out of a job, right? Which could be a good thing in the sense of like, oh, like they don't actually need me to be part of this team. But then I know, it's like, isn't that like the dream, right? But for me, I think as we've scaled and grown, finding my place, because I've always wanted to still be part of the team, right? And not just like a founder that just like invests, financially and then moves on with their life. I personally wanted to still be part of the team and to be contributing part. And so I would say the last 2 years it's shifted so much, right? Initially I was doing so much with like team member onboarding, training, and a lot more with more like HR related side of things. But this last year I've moved a lot more into more of a marketing role. Essentially even like a part-time grant manager because there's been so many opportunities, right, for funding that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so then I oversee a lot of that administrative work, and then overseeing all the like communications, PR, and strategic kind of initiatives.
Has there been anything that's particularly funny? Anything, the funniest thing that's happened in this journey?
Yeah, I would say, back in the farmers market days when we first started up, I mentioned we had weathered through so many, cold days, windy days, rainy days. But there was one month where there was basically no rain. And so because it was so dry, or it had rained so much and then it didn't have rain. And then basically it was weird because the bees basically were not having enough nutrients or enough flowers, I guess, to be able to pollinate.
Right.
And so due to the bad weather, they finally started coming out again once it was, there was better weather. And then many of the businesses around town, along with our pop-up tent, was getting swarmed by bees at that time. And So
Wow.
so the bees decided all to come out en masse when it stopped raining and then it was like drier. And then our tent actually had to shut down at the farmer's market because there was hundreds of bees that were swarming our honey syrup, which
No
we
kidding.
use in our boba tea drinks. And so, yeah, that was actually quite horrific. But looking back, we're like, wow, okay, that would have been quite the scene to observe on the outside. Like, all these folks in a boba tea tent trying to like pack up as quickly as possible as hundreds of bees were storming their tent and trying to eat their honey.
Wow.
And that was completely out of nowhere because, it was fine until like an hour into popping up. And we talked to a few other small businesses that also in their kitchen experienced the same thing, or, they had like a drive-through. The bees were trying to go through the drive-through window.
So if you had to do one thing differently, what would it be? What would you change?
Like as we look back, I think if we were to do one thing differently, I definitely think that I would have like told my, past self as we were expanding the temple, to definitely like raise a lot more funds up front, to help buffer. It would be like a cushion as like a contingency fund, as we were expanding. Cause I think now I know, a lot more about like the financials and like the build out costs and all of the projections that you need to have in place as you're opening that second shop. But I think back then it was like we were very kind of naive towards the process and what that would take. Naive might not be the right word. I think we just had no idea the unexpected emergencies or like the pandemic impact that it would have, right, on that whole journey. So now we're like, wow, yeah, contingency fund needs to be like way higher than you had initially even projected or planned. I think especially these days with inflation being a lot higher and all of the impacts that build out costs can have.
So as you and your husband go through this, what's the goal? I mean, you've already got a couple of locations. Do you want to be a nationwide chain? Do you want to have 100 or 1,000, or are you comfortable with 2?
I think we hope to eventually continue growing beyond just 2 shops. Not like anytime soon, but I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, we definitely do have a hope and goal to maybe have like a 3rd shop. But at this point, our main focus is really wanting to increase just our food offerings between the 2 shops, and then shorter term goal is to increase e-commerce and boba tea related merchandise. But yeah, I think we want to stay within Texas. We don't have plans to become like a national chain, but who knows? A lot of folks have asked us if eventually we want to move into franchising, and that's something that we've definitely thought about, but we haven't reached that point just yet.
Are there any challenges that you faced as a minority entrepreneur that you would not have faced otherwise?
I think there's a few things. So one of the biggest challenges is the fact that boba tea is a Taiwanese beverage, right? And so one of the biggest challenges is just being a boba tea shop owner is just people who don't understand or know what boba tea is. And then the challenge of not just educating and raising awareness about the product, but then also we have had folks, be really like repulsed or have like disgusting faces towards boba, or, just like feeling like having very strong reactions, I would say, to seeing the drink. And then when we first started up back in our pop-up days, actually had folks tell us that our drink is not Texan, and then like storm off after they stop by the tent or just kind of walk by. And so that definitely was very early on in our pop-up journey. And it was an experience that me and another team member at the time witnessed and went through. And I look back and I'm like, wow, like for them to say that our drink is not Texan. Well, honestly, it's not, right? So it's like, I'm not ashamed to say that boba is not Taiwanese drink. It's not from America, and that's okay.
Right.
But our mission at Chaw community is to bridge cultures and to create community, right? And part of our journey, and I think what has helped us to really grow, is that story of, being immigrants, kids in a town and in a part of Texas that's very, very few Asians, but then wanting to bridge cultures, right? And to not just increase representation for Asian products, but to help to increase awareness about just the beautiful, diverse parts of our cultures and the many beautiful cultures around us, and to learn to celebrate, all the different strengths and beauties of diverse cultures. And so because that's part of our business journey and why we want to do what we do, I look back and I'm like, wow, I feel sorry for the individual, that they are unable to appreciate, different cultures and foods. And even if they didn't like boba, at least to have tried or have a curiosity, right, to learn more. I think the world misses out a lot when we're not able to be a bit more open, right, towards all the different cultures around the world. So that was a very early experience, and I'm thankful that we haven't experienced too many other experiences like that. But I think definitely the biggest challenge is just like overcoming that hurdle of the awareness or just the understanding of what boba is.
Right. If you were giving advice to an aspiring entrepreneur, and you are right now, because that's what this show is about, what advice would you give somebody thinking about starting their own company?
Yeah, I would definitely say emphasize community or collaboration over competition. And what I mean by that is there's so many other small business owners, organizations, nonprofits in your community, and you'll be able to find other folks who want to collaborate and work alongside you. And connecting with those folks can actually increase not just your business, but then give you a lot more creativity and ideas, funding opportunities, and even just special creative projects that could happen. For example, we were able to connect with a local Mexican ice cream shop and do some collaborations between our beverages with their ice creams, right, and to mix flavors, right, and do fun collaborations like that. Like if we were just focused only on our own business and like seeing them as a competitor since they also sell drinks, we would have missed out on that project and the opportunity, right, to be able to help each other grow. And so I definitely encourage small business owners to think that way, to see it as, when we all rise, we rise together. And so definitely finding other small business owners to connect with, to work alongside is so huge for your own journey.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. Great advice. Now, if any of our listeners want to come by and get some boba tea while they're in Waco, or buy something off of your website, how would they get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so our website is on chawcommunity.com. That's CHA, chawcommunity.com. And then you can find us in downtown Waco at 1001 Franklin Avenue. And we're also in downtown Temple now at 7 North Main Street, just right across City Hall. And then, of course, other than our website, you can also find us on Instagram at chaw_community. And we have other social media outlets that you can follow through our website as well.
That's awesome. All right, next time I'm driving through Waco, I will stop by and find out what boba tea is all about. Sounds fantastic, and thank you for sharing your great story with us and our listeners, and we will check back in soon.
Yes, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for listening. We hope you were informed and inspired. Now we would like to ask a favor of you. If you could please leave us a review on the podcast platform and follow us, that would be great. And please share us with your network and help support minority business. Thank you.